Welcome back to the Tuesday Weekend, the podcast that will take another round of margaritas. Thank you. In our pizza episode a couple of weeks ago, we really focused on styles. We didn't really spend a lot of time talking about toppings. And I have to admit, I have a very basic habit. I love cheese pizza. Give me just the crust, the sauce, the cheese, and let me see how you do those. Because if I don't like how you do a cheese pizza, I'm probably not going to even try your peanut butter kimchi pizza, you know? I mean, sometimes I like the weird, sometimes I just want pizza. So one of the few true perks of being a front of house manager is that manager meal every day. So at the end of the night last night, I asked the pizza guy to make me a cheese pizza. And he's like, cheese? I'm not going to make you cheese. I made the guys a meatball pizza they really liked. You want something like that? And all right, I relented. Fine. Make me your meatball pizza. So I run upstairs, do some paperwork, come back down, and I come back and he's like, yeah, I call this the Meatball Supreme. And he handed me a pizza box with real heft to it. It had sliced meatballs, artichoke hearts, red onion, jalapeno, black olives, and green onion. Okay, I will reiterate, this was a free pizza, and it was actually really pretty good. Okay, I will say, if he wants an honest critique, he didn't really get good color on the cheese, even though the crust was done, because he just went so heavy on the toppings. But with the huge caveat that I still ate and enjoyed this pizza, all I wanted was a cheese pizza. This was like 3 steps removed from the pizza that I had asked for. Why can't I just have a damn cheese pizza? First of all, that's all I wanted. And then second, the food cost is a whole bunch lower on it. But also, if your goal is to impress me, you put way too much on there and you didn't get good color on the cheese. So I give you a B. But also, as importantly, if you want to impress me, do something simple very well. And that brings us back to our margarita. Because again, simple, well done. I'm not looking for fussy. I'm not looking for frilly. I am looking for the tequila. Yes. I'll get back to my early days as a cook because I went to the French Culinary Institute for culinary school where I had some very, very fancy high-end French chefs that really loved the intricate and the ornate. And then I spent 6 months cooking in Italy for a chef who loved to take the best ingredients she could get and let them do their thing. Just so many of her plates had 4 ingredients on it. I mean, we're very simple. Well, simple, but not basic. Yeah. I don't know how to draw the distinction. And really, I guess in my career as a chef, I sometimes oscillate between the intricate and the ornate and the simple, let it do its thing. But really, when it comes down to it, if you want to impress me, do something simple very well.
Well, and that goes back to like when we were the menu episode, when we were talking about the drink menus I write, I don't want more than 5 ingredients in any drink.
Right.
I want it to be simple and easy for the entire staff. Not every staff has someone like, say, me, who's been making drinks for 3 decades.
Yep.
Or I walk behind a bar and start making drinks and it looks like that's what I do. You want simplicity in your drinks. It's fun to do the variations and stuff. Right now we have a wine called Niner, which is a fantastic wine. It is a Meritage, which means it is a blended wine, but it is blended from 9 grapes. First off, I'm ecstatic that someone said, hey, yeah, go ahead, use 9 different grapes to make a wine. You don't really ever see anything like that. You see 1 or 2, maybe 3, and it's always the same stuff. It's always a Bordeaux. It's always a Cab Franc.
Exactly.
I mean, it's always, those are always in there. Well, they're in there, but there's also like a Syrah. There's a Zin.
It's like,
there's a Cab. There's a Merlot.
They're cool. Yeah.
Yeah, they have and it tastes fantastic. But that can't be easy and that can't be simple to make. I think that kind of reflects in the price. It's the same thing like when you go to a craft cocktail bar, yes, you are looking for the ornate drinks, the good drinks that are going to have several different slight flavor additions to them that you are drinking this drink to notice. It's like, that sounds good. That sounds good. I want to see how this all tastes together.
Yep.
And that's great. But at the same time, a lot of the classic cocktails are just simple. They didn't have all of the liquors. They probably had a whole bunch of stuff we've never heard of when they made a lot of these drinks. We just don't have anymore.
Well, I mean, you touched on
like the Domenia.
I can only imagine the volume of house made whatnot.
Well, lots of
Or,
bars do that. Lots of bars do that now. I
Sure.
mean, like a lot of the craft, it's called shrubs. I've worked at several bars that actually we do shrubs, where you take this and put it in liquor and infuse the liquor with this flavor. That's kind of how you do it. Then that's where all these other liquors actually, that's where they come from after a while. Then they get huger processed and kind of lose a lot. That's where a lot of these flavors came from. And a lot of the drinks that we drink now are us recreating what was used then. The Vesper, the James Bond cocktail, the James Bond martini that has Lillet Blanco in it now used to have an entirely different Lillet, which is a citrus vermouth that is no longer made. And I would love to know what that tastes like. I've heard that this one is very close, and there's two, and they're both very close. The owner of actually Lillet was in a restaurant down here a couple of years ago, and my friend who was a bartender there was waiting on him and talking. He was talking about how it's got a slightly different flavor, how the original one had like a more robust flavor. I'm like, oh, wow. So,
Sure.
talking to just right out of the horse's mouth, mine is different, and here's how it's different.
Right.
The Vesper came up, and she's like, yeah, it's a popular cocktail now because of the James Bond movies. And he's like, yeah, but this doesn't taste quite right. He's like, you almost want to add more Lillet to it just to get more flavor. He's like, but it still wouldn't taste the same as the original.
Sure. That reminds me of, for Christmas last year, I got my dad a bottle of chartreuse because he is the kind that enjoys an anisette. And
the green or the yellow?
I couldn't remember which he preferred, so I got him the yellow. And of course, he opens it and is like, oh, I prefer the green. And it's just like, oh, I should have guessed.
The green's stronger by a lot.
Yeah.
But also, and when you taste them, the viscosity is different. The yellow is a little more sugary, a lot more sugary in my taste. But I don't like the yellow. I like the green. When yellow's in a drink, I can taste it immediately. When I'm like, hey, can you make this but use green instead of yellow? And they're like, okay, sure. And then they're like, oh, I'm like, yeah, and just don't do an ounce, do a half ounce, because the green is marketably stronger.
Well, and Dad, cover your ears. I might just get him a bottle of green chartreuse for Christmas this year. So yeah,
a friend of mine actually makes a Gold Rush variant. For those of you out there, a Gold Rush is bourbon and lemon juice and honey.
Yeah.
And he adds green chartreuse and calls it a Green Rush. And it's fantastic.
I would try that. Absolutely.
Whenever he's working, I order it. It's one of his go-to drinks, and he likes making it. And it's just like, it's a great cocktail. But if I've had it with a yellow chartreuse as well, because they were out of green, and he was just like, it doesn't taste right. And I'm like, no, it doesn't taste right. So, I mean, there's a very big flavor difference between yellow chartreuse and green chartreuse. And also, when you're looking at the canned ones, I mean, I don't like to be a shill for someone, but Cutwater does probably the best canned cocktails on the planet.
And
they do them regional.
Yeah, actually, Cutwater is, of all the canned cocktails, my favorite. Like all of the ones that I have tried, from the margarita, and they have both a lime and a strawberry, and I think a mango, and their Mai Tai is solid. It just
their gin and tonic is solid. I mean, I liked their vodka grapefruit. That's a nice, light, refreshing, almost like a seltzer thing, but it's like it crushes you.
And I will say, what I actually really, really like the canned cocktails for, I will admit, is when I go hiking, I will drink one of those margaritas as my summit beer, because I don't drink an awful lot of beer these days, especially not canned beer. Draft beer, sure, still, but I still very much am into the whole concept of a summit beer. When you get to the top of that mountain, you get a reward. Yeah,
absolutely.
But just one, because you still need to get down. But that's really what I enjoy these days.
Yeah, it's like sailboat race. We finish, we have a beer, and then we put the boat away.
Somebody last week had asked me, so what is it with cyclists and beer? And it's like, oh, brother, I can't even begin to explain the intricate connection between riding your bike for 60 miles and then drinking a pitcher of beer, because it's a thing. But, yeah. All right. Well, before we get to our restaurant shout-outs, is there anything else you want to mention about the margarita?
There's a million margarita variations out there. There's a whole bunch of ways to make them. I still like the classic way, just the simple tequila, lime juice, and Cointreau. But if you like it a little different, order it differently, have it made differently. That is entirely on you. Again, cocktails are for you to enjoy. There's not like this is how you make it and this is it, the only way you can have it. That's kind of the cool thing about food and beverage is that we can modify stuff to our own tastes.
Oh, and absolutely. I want to say to anybody watching, if you have a way that you make your margarita that you think is superior, come make it for one of the two of us because we absolutely want to try that.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. Love to see the recipe, see when it comes out. You know, there's everyone's got a little different flavor, a little different thing.
Sure. I mean, kind of like pizza is you have the base model and then you get to play with it.
Yeah.
And now, sure, I'm not going to then call it a Neapolitan if it's not that. But, you know, like a margarita pizza has a certain set of ingredients on it, and then you don't get to call it a margarita anymore.
So that's kind of the whole point of the margarita. And I think of this discussion is that there is a margarita, and then there are all of the variations that are not, they're based on the margarita.
Absolutely.
They're not a margarita. Like when you say a strawberry margarita, that is a variation. It is a strawberry margarita. Mango habanero margarita, that is a variation. I'm not going to say a margarita and expect it to come out with strawberry in it. And I have had guests do that. I'm like, here's your margarita. Why isn't there strawberry in it? And I'm like, you didn't say anything about strawberry at all.
That was actually the nice thing at the bar in the ballroom is somebody would ask for a strawberry margarita and I would just be able to say, oh, no.
I don't have strawberry. Same way. I'm just like, strawberry margarita. I'm like, I don't have strawberry.
All right.
Why not? And I'm like, I get a strawberry margarita order like once a month, maybe.
It's like, all right, go down to 7-Eleven, get yourself a Slurpee. I will just pour some tequila over it.
Yeah, just go get a Slurpee. I'll pour and we didn't get into that. So
yeah, I was actually going to say my final note is don't get it blended, just get it on the rocks. Come on, grow up.
I mean, if you like a frozen drink and you've got a place that actually does that all the time,
sure. Okay.
If you walk in and they're just making frozen margaritas nonstop, then that's the place to get a frozen margarita. If you walk into a bar and you see the bartender looking around for the lid to the blender, that is not the place to order a frozen beverage.
Yeah. And I mean, I hate to do this to my Applebee's bartender brethren, but you know, they've got 3 blenders behind their bar. They could probably do it for you, but most of us don't, and we don't want it. And so just get it on the rocks.
Just real quick on the frozen drinks. The problem with the frozen drink is it's going to separate. All the mix is going to float to the top and the liquor is going to go to the bottom if you don't drink it fast enough. I mean, or if it's super hot outside, it's going to melt. There's going to be ice crystals floating on top with the lime juice and the lighter liquor, and then the Cointreau and the tequila are going to be in the bottom. And if you're drinking that, it's going to filter through the ice, but you're not going to get the same flavor at all. You're basically just drinking tequila and Cointreau. That's about all you're tasting. Frozen drinks are great when they're done properly, but kind of pick your battles on that one. Don't go into like an Irish pub and ask for a frozen margarita.
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. Read the room.
Yeah. Kind of know where you're at. Don't do what my little brother did and walk into a bar in Squamish, British Columbia, in a mining camp that was like a tourist place and asked the bartender for a margarita. To which point I had to teach the bartender how to make margaritas. And then he put them on special because he had a case of tequila that he had been able to sell for like years.
Okay. So here's the, am I the asshole question is back in July when I was in Talkeetna, I was out with 3 of my friends who live up there and they all ordered Pacificos and I asked for a margarita and the bartender rolled her eyes so heavy I could almost hear it. It's just like, what? I didn't ask for it blended. I just want a margarita. And because all she wanted to do was
open beer
and pass it across. But
I mean, that's again, if you want a margarita, you should have the ingredients. Any bar should have the ingredients for a margarita.
They should.
You just should.
Yeah. I mean, she made it well, I will say. Okay. So let us get to then our restaurant shout outs. And this week I'm going to shout out Eve's Eatery right here in Carson City. Right across from the Capitol building. They are open for breakfast and lunch. And honestly, it is Dee and my favorite place to go eat breakfast on those very few occasions that the two of us actually both have a morning off together. But really good food, thoughtfully prepared, great service. Love everyone there. So Eve's Eatery.
Yeah, now I'm going to go get breakfast because there's a place I want to go for a while and I haven't been. But the shout out I'm going is going to be margarita based, as I do get down to Ensenada quite a bit, racing sailboats. I am going to shout out the fish market in Ensenada. It is a legitimate fish market. You walk around and see fish you have never seen before, and they have everything. I've got several dozen pictures of just like, what's that? What's that fish? What's that? But in the fish market, There is a little tiny hole in the wall kitchen with 2 tables that seat maybe about 10 people total.
Mm-hmm.
They make fish tacos there. And when she runs out of fish, she walks out into the fish market and comes walking back in with a live fish and cleans it and makes more fish tacos.
Beautiful.
They are the best fish tacos I've ever had. I was down there with a group of 4 or 5 guys. We probably had 50 tacos, 60 tacos. I mean, because they're the little perfect little tacos. And then, you know, probably had a case of beer as well. And I think it was like $40.
Wow.
Total. But I mean, she was literally walking back in, cleaning the fish and making the tacos out of the fish. She had just barely, it was fantastic. Place doesn't have a name. Like I say, go to the fish market. You'll see the restaurant. It just says, you know, restaurant in Spanish, and you walk in and there's nice little plastic chairs and a formica table. And
awesome.
This lady, help yourself with the beer. How many tacos do you want? That's literally it. And it's just like, oh, I want like 5 tacos. Yeah, I want 5, 6 tacos and just go from there.
Sweet.
So yeah, I mean, I love walking into those little places where, hey, what's that? That looks like they make tacos. Let's go try it. You know, I love finding those places like that. So yeah, that's my shout out this week.
All right, great. Oh, the one point I did not bring up in that whole introduction, the word for daisy in Spanish
is margarita. Yep. Yeah, I should have pointed that out too.
Yep.
I mean, also, if you want to move that, daisy is the word for margarita, as well as a lot of the lore about the margarita is it being named after a woman named Margaret.
Sure.
Or Marjorie.
Well,
I mean, those were the names that kept coming up.
And really, I even know a couple of margaritas because I've worked with enough Latino women. And so I just assumed it was named after a person. And then it really was just this weekend that I learned that it was the word for daisy. And that makes so much sense to me.
Yeah. The Who song Margarita was named after Margarita Hinkle, who was the daughter of an ambassador in Mexico.
Interesting.
So German ambassador who now lived in Mexico. Marjorie was the name of one of the Rockettes or something like that. In the Texas version's lore of where margaritas came from, who would only drink tequila, and they came up with it for her because she couldn't drink other liquors. You know, so I guess, you know, that you have those allergies all the way back then too.
I can only drink tequila.
Exactly. I mean, and it was like this guitarist named it after like his wife, or there was always a Margaret or a Marjorie, Meg, you know, always involved in the naming of all of these. And that's they kept saying that, but like you said, margarita is daisy.
It's daisy.
I don't know where the picador came from back in Britain. I mean, he had to have heard of that from someone who had been traveling out in North America.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine that there was a lot of tequila. Also, interestingly enough, there was a lot more bars in Mexico during Prohibition.
Absolutely. That makes so much sense to me. Because
the first write-down was this guy out of Iowa in the Mobile Times. His name's Graham. He owned the paper, and he was in Mexico. And he said, I had this drink. They called it like a margarita or something like that. But he didn't really know the name of the drink, but it was a margarita. Right. And he's like, yeah, I'd been down here for Prohibition before, and there was like 150 bars, and now there's 5.
Wow.
So apparently Mexico was going off during Prohibition.
I mean, it's a gold rush, just of a very different kind of gold.
Indeed it is.
Okay.
Sad.
Well, with that, I mean, at this point, this glass is empty, but I still have at least an ounce of freshly squeezed lime juice. So before I start slurring my words too badly, I want to thank my co-host, Nick Parkin. I'm Josh Hobson. Our social media is done by Deneen Oliver. The music you are hearing was made by Andrew Smith. And we will be back next week with more.
And if you don't like tequila, make a gin daisy.
Make a gin daisy. You know what? Let's bring the daisy back.